The SBU, which is Ukrainian intelligence, carried out an operation known as Operation Spiderweb. Now, this was reportedly planned for over a year and a half. So when we talk about everything that's, I'm about to show you, process that when Zelensky was in that meeting with Donald Trump, when Zelensky was going through all of these diplomatic sways and back and forths, apparently he was well informed about this. He was well informed about the progressing of this operation. And so when the statements kept being made to him about the cards not being in their favor, they don't got any cards, they, what tools do they have? They don't got anything basically to, back them up. Zelensky knew that this operation was in waiting. Okay, at least this operation. We don't know what other operations are in waiting, but at least this operation. So what they did is that they gathered a bunch of drones, 150, and they stuck them in shipping containers. Now, I think we actually have some of these shipping containers. We have photos of them right here. And after sticking them in these shipping containers, they then put them on the back of Russian commercial truckers. So these like commercial truckers, they gave them like a contract to bring these shipped containers, which reportedly the Russians in question that are actually driving these trucks were told they were like moving around like some prefabricated house of some sort. They drove them to pre-chosen locations, mostly outside of Russian air bases across the country, but there was at least one port where some submarines are, where it also happened. And then they were told to park out of these locations en route to Murmansk. And then after parking outside these locations, while they're sitting on the side of the road, the tops of these shipping containers were remotely controlled by the Ukrainians and opened, and then the drones started to fly out one after the other with pre-programmed routes to their military objectives. Now, what were those military objectives? Bombers, aircraft, airfields, and as we said before, at least one port. And they did a lot of damage. But first, let me show you the surreal perspective of the Russian on the ground watching as this truck starts to send drone after drone after drone out towards the air bases as smoke rises in the distance.
Вот он, коптер опять взлетел. Откуда взлетает, ничего не понятно, блядь. Вот он, клоун, блядь. Оба ни с того ни с сего, сука. Оба! Вот дела, блядь. Ёб твою мать, до чего техника дошла. А нахуя мы работаем за рулем-то, блядь? Лучше он коптером управляй, нахуй, грузовой и все. О, блядь. А, это менты сшибают его, прикинь. Это какой-то с автомата очередь, нахуй. О, нихуя себе дела, блядь. Оказывается, пидорас, оказывается. О, блядь. Менты промазали, нахуй. Ёбаный, он опять туда полетел, сука, в эту гущу, нахуй. Вот еще один, сука, пидорас. Вот он, еще один пидорас.
So if you're curious what he's saying, he's basically cussing, and then he's referring to the Ukrainians as F slurs. And can you believe, right at the start of Pride Month, can we cancel this man? He should have to read some feminist queer literature before he gets to release more stuff on social media. Okay, so they, he's cursing them and stuff like that. But I mean, all he can do is stand there and watch after drone after drone after drone goes out. Now, of the 150 drones that ended up getting sent out from these shipping containers, I believe 116 actually made flight. So not every single one made flight, but the vast majority of them did make flight and go out to their targets. And let me just say, well, I don't know what somebody could tell somebody in this position to do. Wolful Woodpecker, thank you for the primer. 15-month subs, appreciate it. I don't know what somebody could say, like, go stop the drone. There's nothing this guy could do. What is he? He can't get like a stick and just start like rah and like swinging at it. The only thing somebody can do is you hear the machine gun fire as somebody tries to shoot down these drones. And the reason I bring this up is because there's another clip, and I don't want to look at it, of Russian locals trying to stop the drones. and they like go into like the truck to like go like monitor, like they go get and it explodes. So if you see military vehicles, you know, going out of these trucks to go, maybe you should be aware that there could be a failsafe, that these are weapons, they could explode. But Russia, and I don't want to jump to any aspersions as to why people made this judgment. Maybe people thought, if it's me or the bombers that are blowing up Russian Ukrainian cities, then I'll choose to endanger myself. Of course, they don't know where these drones are probably going. Then again, you're close enough to an air base that you should probably know. A point is, though, in Russia, they haven't, I guess, gone through the same general education of, hey, if you don't know what it is, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. If you don't know what it is, don't poke it. Don't kick it. Don't touch it. It could explode. It could kill you. And sadly, in one instance, somebody found that out in reference to this. So these drones then head off to these air bases. And, they've gotten these drones into the country. They've gotten them into position. They've gotten them to position under the radar. And let me tell you, these Russians were not expecting it whatsoever, because they were not ready for the drones when they came over. They did not have the air defense teams in place. They might have had air defense teams in place to deal with larger drones, the bigger long-range Ukrainian drone program, which has been expanding this year. I mean, we already know that in this year, 2025, the Ukrainians are projected to produce more drones than in 2024, 2023, and 2022 combined when it comes to these long-range strike capacity. So the Russians are preparing for that. They've been actively preparing for that. If you watch like Russian Telegram reports about the bombing, they're not denying that it's getting worse. They openly talk about the fact that, they're now in the triple digits for like Ukrainian drones as they continue to go deeper and deeper into Russia, targeting oil refineries, ammunition storage, air defense systems, anything that's associated with the war effort or propping up the war effort. But they were not ready for a swarm of FPV drones right outside their air base. They're much smaller. They're going to be harder. You can't really shoot them down with like the air defense missiles. You're going to have to shoot them down with either jammers of some sort or small arms fire. And if it's a pre-programmed route and there isn't a pilot piloting the drone, then the jammers are going to be a problem, and you're just going to have to use small arm fire, maybe a shotgun of some sort. But if you're a Russian working at this air base, you didn't know this was going to happen. Are you going to run out to defend these bombers with a shotgun? Do you even have a shotgun, which is the best weapon to take these things down? Anyway, the Russians were not prepared. And so these drones were able to get some incredible footage of a bunch of Russian strategic bombers, Tu-95s, and other aircraft burning in airfields all across the country. And here is the footage from the first-person perspective of one of these FPV drones as they pass the different burning husks of the Russian Air Force. By the way, do you guys see all these? Do you guys see those tires that are like strewn about on this one aircraft here? I've seen people try to put like tires and stuff like that to help with the possibility of like attacks by like drones and stuff, to add like a little bit more like protection, but I've never seen that placed upon the wings of a plane. I think those look like tires. I don't know what else they would be if they are tires. Are they I don't know. This is a question for you guys. I am uninformed. But if those are tires, that's really stupid. And I'm not going to claim to be, an expert in Russian aviation, but the thing's on fire. But maybe if it hits the tire, it'll bounce off. It's got a 5% chance, just a little extra bit of padding. Oh, but there's more. It looks like it's, ooh. You know what I noticed watching this again? I've seen this before. I've seen this footage before. I've seen this explosion before. But you want to know what I just noticed now that they've pointed out the tires?
A curd is a curd.
Hey, thank you for the 2. I appreciate that. Remember, Dylan, everything's going to plan. Everything's going to plan. Everything's going the plan. It's a very special military operation. If you watch this carefully, you can see after the explosion, you can see all the tires go flying, and you can see one tire at the tip of the plane wing roll away. So, yeah, the tires did not do much. The tires did not do much to protect the air fleet. It's really weird to think that at the last moment, it wasn't air defense systems. It wasn't, the mighty government of Vladimir Putin. It was tires that ended up being the last line of defense. Anyway, so this happens and across a few air bases all across the country. And I believe I have a map down here of a few of these air bases that had happened. Here's different locations. You can see one up near Murmansk in the north. You can see two near Moscow. You can see one way out into the east of the country. Way out there. And so, I mean, this was a wide-spanning operation across all of continental Russia, except for maybe they haven't gotten to Vladivostok, but there were explosions reported in Vladivostok recently, but that was in a separate incident. And this operation shook the Russians. And the reason it shook the Russians is because the reason this looks really bad, and you can see, all this damage, is because it is bad. The reported loss of aircraft is over 40. And now not every single one of those aircraft losses are, Tu-95 bombers that are going to be tens and tens of millions of dollars in value, which if we go to a lot of the predictions of exactly how much equipment has been lost, I've seen predictions that are up to $2 billion. I've seen predictions that are well past $2 billion. But we're talking about a military asset loss of millions of dollars, billions of dollars of not easy to replace military material. And what I mean by that is if you lose $1 billion of artillery shells, an artillery shell is not a particularly complicated system. So you might have certain chokeholds in the supply chain when it comes to gunpowder, when it comes to, the propellant or something like that. But when it comes to the steel and Russia they're producing artillery shells. They might need more, but this is something that is replaceable. These types of aircraft, you cannot just snap your fingers and another one pops into existence. They're extremely expensive. And not only are they extremely expensive, but the parts are expensive and the parts are complex. And so for them to rebuild all these bombers is not only going to take a lot of money, there's a question as to whether they have the resources, especially under current tariff policy, to do so. And if they do, how much resources is that going to be diverting from other areas? Mind you, we're talking about over 40 aircraft, and we're not just talking about 95s here, not just about these strategic bombers. We're also talking about radar aircraft. And one particularly damaging pieces of equipment for the Russian war machine and what they could lose or what they have lost is AWACS. AWACS. That's the A-50. These are radar aircraft. They had 3 of them left. Losing aircraft like that, those are nearly impossible to replace during the war, and is going to take not only a big investment, but it's going to take you scrounging around to get these parts from places that they just don't have them. Point is, these are irrecoverable losses. They might be able to recover this after the war, with large scale investment and stuff, but they're not going to be able to replace all these bombers being used to attack Ukraine. And this should be emphasized, the aircrafts being targeted are not just random aircrafts and being used by no one. These are aircrafts that are being used to bomb Ukraine. These are not going to be easily replaced during the war, especially the radar aircraft. And so when we're talking about 10 to 20% or the different percentages, we don't know the specifics, but we know it was a sizable enough percentage of the bomber fleet being lost that were in the double digits, where I'm seeing predictions of 20% within 2 hours, mind you. To lose that type of numbers in 2 hours, there's not a precedent for that in this war. Mind you, that the Tu-95s are part of Russia's nuclear triad, meaning these are that thing that's on fire right there, That thing, the thing in flames with tires flying off of them. By the way, I was just sent a message by somebody. The tires are actually supposed to like mess with like the AI or something. They've been doing this since like 2023. I don't think it's to make them bounce off. Either way, didn't work. Didn't work. They still saw the plane there under all those tires. But these are part of the nuclear triad. For those of you who don't know what a nuclear triad is, the nuclear triad is three things: missile silos, so that's one delivery system to deliver atomic weapons; submarines, that means submarines that are constantly out at sea, so that if missile silos were struck or airfields were struck, they would still be able to fire off some atomic weapons by always having one of these nuclear submarines out at sea loaded up with ICBMs. And the third piece are these types of bombers, which can also deliver, atomic weapons. Now, are they the most efficient system? Are they the most advanced system to be delivering atomic weapons? No, but the point of the nuclear triad isn't that all of these systems need to be top tier or they all need to be like the tippy top or whatever. They just need to have as many means to deliver these atomic weapons as possible so that their threat of being able to deliver them at any time is credible, is taken credibly. I want to say Miles Hill, thank you for gifting 5 tier 1 subs over there in the beautiful YouTube chat to Betty Jean, Todd Metziger, Ryan Cornwallis, Mutant UK, and GMQ Consultancy and Advisory. What a name. What a name.
Burns is an
immoral, morally corrupt, bankrupt man.
Burns is an
immoral, morally corrupt, bankrupt man. Okay, now that we got that out of the system. So, losing double digits out of your bomber fleet, losing a substantial portion of your nuclear triad, losing irreplaceable radar aircraft, losing billions of dollars worth of equipment that, again, not easy to replace, especially during wartime with sanctions in place. And then on top of it all, for the footage to be publicized, for the Ukrainians to go on this victory lap like that. I saw Andrei Yarmak tweeting out pictures of spider webs. I saw Zelensky going out there saying like, oh, there will be humbled through time as more X, Y, Z. Like they're doing the victory lap. Russia has been also humiliated to some degree. And, while that's probably not the most important part of this, warfare is also psychological. And when the Russian public are faced with loss after loss after loss, that does provide a psychological impact. Now, moving on from that, one second, where was it? We got some photos where you can see above the type of damage that was done, and you can see the Tu-95, another Tu-95, a damaged Tu-95, a destroyed Tu-95, a destroyed Tu-22M3. There's plenty of satellite photos showing how much damage is done across the country. So if the Russians could have tried to cover it up, maybe back in the day in 1950, they can't do it today when not only is there footage on these munitions that are being published, but you can just take photos from space showing the damage, showing the burning, showing the smashed aircraft. And let me just tell you something. This is not going to be the last time you see an attack like this. And I'm not even saying like this is the Ukrainians are going to do this again. Pulling this off the first time was probably hard enough. Pulling it off a second time will also probably be hard. That's not to say that maybe they'll smuggle in 20 outside an air base instead. But there's two effects that I want to talk about. One that I want to make sure is mentioned is this is going to be an even bigger resource sink on the Russians because they're going to have to divert air defense equipment to their air bases across the country to protect the last fragments of their atomic, triad, and making sure that they can preserve more of the Russian Air Force if they mean to continue to conduct this war. That means more resources on air defense systems at these air bases, not just dealing with long-range Ukrainian attack drones, which are going to continue to go up in production, but also dealing with shorter-range FPVs, which can appear out of the bush as long as the SBU has planned it right. So that's the first thing. The second thing we need to talk about is the impact on 21st century warfare. We're going to talk about a few of the reactions to this. And I've seen some people talk about, Ukraine doesn't know what it's done and the can of worms that it's opened and the using of, these type of commercial trucks for an attack like this and yada, yada, yada. Number one, the Russians have broadcasted and advertised their missiles from outside of shipping containers before. This is not a particularly, and not to mention the Russians have, attacked commercial shipping. And point is, it's not like there's no precedent for the use of, a commercial vessel or commercial truck to carry out this type of attack, not even in this war. The bigger implication, I think, is this type of attack with drones happening like this, period, hiding them outside of a location like this, moving them in either through a shipping truck, a van, or just a box. It could be anything. And after moving it in place, just going one after the other of these $500 to $1.5 thousand drones. I'm going to assume they're on the higher end for an operation like this. So like $1,000 drones, taking out $20 million pieces of equipment. The defense economics math is too good to make militaries ignore it. The idea of getting $1,000 pieces of equipment, $100,000 worth of equipment, to put it outside of a bunch of air bases, to potentially disable billions of dollars worth of military equipment that is not easily replaceable when drones very much are. Someone was going to do it. This was inevitable. When we talk about, for example, AI being used more and more for these drone attacks at the later stages so that when it gets jammed, it can still make impact, or the idea of not only AI going past that to be part of the identification process of the enemy and be part of, maybe even controlling the drone on its own in the future, even though it's not something that's widespread right now, or the drone making decisions on whether or not to pull the trigger. These are all moral questions and military questions that are going to happen because it's advancing at that pace and it's inevitable. And so something like this was inevitable too. The defense economics of it is too good. If it wasn't the Ukrainians, maybe it would be the Pakistanis, maybe it would be the Indians, maybe it would be a organization fighting against Wagner in Mali. Maybe it would be one of the factions in the Sudanese civil war. Maybe it would be China with giant shipping containers or stuff off the coast of Taiwan or near it looks like a commercial vessel, but then it comes next to a military ship, and then boom, like 100 drones fly out, and boom, 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 boom. Someone was eventually going to do this style of attack just due to the defense economics of it. The price tag for these weapons compared to what you're taking out is too good, and the opportunity to actually use it in this way too tempting, that some military force, whether it was a state actor or a non-state actor, was inevitable. Now, the thing that scares me is non-state organizations, specifically terrorist organizations, trying something like this on a smaller scale with, say, something like a van. It's not hard for me to imagine an organization like the Islamic State, or an organization of some other stuff, maybe some anti-government, like, militia of some sort, it doesn't matter, but some organization loading up it doesn't even need to, it could be a $1,000, a few $1,000 rent U-Haul, and then loading them up with 100 FPVs and putting it outside of some important Air Force base, or putting it outside of, more scarily, New York City, Baltimore, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Paris, Berlin, London, Sydney, Tokyo, Beijing. You put one of those vans stuck with 100 drones in there, and you could have terrorists piloting these drones from who knows what distance away from the site of the crime, and then they can get away. Hopefully not, and even if they don't get away, 100 armed drones flying through the streets of New York City during, say, a parade or, say, New Year's, that's terrifying. That's something that really scares me. That's something that really unsettles me. That's something where, honestly, I only think that's a matter of time. And I hate to put it that way. I hate to say it in that type of fatalistic language, but I think it's only a matter of time until this type of attack is not carried out on military assets as it was done here, but on civilians by non-state groups. And the reason why I think they can do it is because it's totally in their price range. And it's not like the parts for FPV are particularly difficult to get. And it's not like any of these groups have had difficulty getting C4 before. We don't think that Al-Qaeda could come together with $100,000 to $200,000. We don't think they could get somebody to rent them a U-Haul. Look, I acknowledge that these organizations don't have the same organizational skill as the Ukrainians. Maybe like the idea of smuggling it into all these different air bases of being this widespread, being planned for a year and a half, this being well executed. Maybe they'll even get caught. I think the odds of them getting caught are much higher. But I do think it's only a matter of time until some type of attack like that happens. And again, this is not the fault of the Ukrainians in any way. I am just trying to process the developments of what this means for 21st century warfare. And what it means is that with a lot less money, you can do a lot more damage to not only military infrastructure, but to whatever target you want to take out. And so this is devastating for the Russian Air Force. This is humiliating for the Russian Air Force. This is very expensive for the Russian Air Force. They're going to have to expend a lot of resources to try to protect their air bases now for not only long-range drones, but short-range drones. A lot of these losses, at least for the duration of this war, are irreplaceable. But the impact on global warfare for the 21st century, that's decided. It's here. This is the future of warfare. We are in the spider web era. We are 100% in the spider web era.